Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving deep into one of the wildest stories in the world of professional baseball. And I mean wild, this one has it all. Cartels, corrupt cops, million-dollar extortion plots, FBI investigations, breakout performances, and a career that spiraled into chaos. I'm talking about none other than Yasiel Puig. Every sport has its legends, its comebacks, its cautionary tales. But Puig's journey? It feels like a Hollywood script that no one would believe. His life is one of the most intense, bizarre, and tragic stories in modern baseball. Let's rewind the clock to 2009. In Cienfuegos, Cuba, a 19-year-old Yasiel Puig was already something of a myth in the making. Playing in Serie Nacional, the top baseball league in the country, Puig wasn't just holding his own against seasoned veterans. He was dominating. At 16, he had already joined Cuba's national team. By 17, he was launching home runs with such violence that one reportedly crashed through the second-story window of a nearby building. In his final season in Cuba, he posted a 330 batting average, a 430 on-base percentage, and showed the kind of raw talent that made scouts drool. But in Cuba, success in sports comes with a price. It puts you under the government's microscope. The better you are, the closer they watch, because the state knows what's at stake. A single defection could cost them millions, and for Puig, the scrutiny was suffocating. He had already made several attempts to escape. The first came in March 2011 under cover of night. He was caught and detained. Just 2 months later, he tried again, reaching open waters before being intercepted. August brought another attempt, but he was stopped before even reaching the shore. Then, in January 2012, he made a fourth try, again detained by authorities. Each failed attempt brought more than just baseball suspensions. It meant constant surveillance, government interference in every move he made. The Cuban regime knew exactly what kind of player Puig was, someone who could command millions in MLB. They weren't going to let that slip through their fingers. But they underestimated his resolve. Banned from baseball, isolated and desperate, Puig made a decision that would change his life forever. In 2012, he got involved with a criminal smuggling ring operating out of Miami. But this wasn't just any group. They had ties to Los Zetas, one of Mexico's most brutal drug cartels. The arrangement seemed straightforward. They'd get him out of Cuba in exchange for 20% of his future earnings. What Puig didn't understand was that he was swapping one kind of prison for another. The escape itself played out like a scene from a thriller. Puig was taken by speedboat to Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. But freedom wasn't waiting on the other side. Instead, he found himself locked in a grimy motel room with no windows and armed guards stationed at the door. For weeks, he remained a prisoner, while various cartels and middlemen argued over who owned him. One group said they had paid off his smugglers. Another claimed to have brokered the deal directly with handlers in Cuba. A third demanded a cut, just for allowing him passage through their territory. With no agreement in sight, threats escalated. If a deal wasn't made soon, Puig might simply vanish. And it wasn't just talk. Other players who had failed to pay had disappeared without a trace. But then, in June 2012, salvation came in the form of a 7-year, $42 million deal from the Los Angeles Dodgers. Most scouts hadn't seen him play in over a year. To outsiders, it looked insane. But the Dodgers were betting big on raw potential, and they weren't wrong. For Puig, that contract should have meant a fresh start. Instead, it marked the beginning of another nightmare. Although Puig had finally inked a life-changing contract with the Dodgers, his nightmare was far from over. The cartel that helped him escape decided 20% of future earnings wasn't nearly enough. They wanted more, and they wanted it immediately. Even as Puig was reporting to the Dodgers' minor league affiliate, he was living under the constant shadow of extortion. Every hit he made in Rancho Cucamonga, every home run that wowed fans and coaches alike, was followed by threats behind closed doors. He batted an astonishing .354, but off the field he was constantly on edge. Cartel operatives weren't subtle. They would appear outside his hotel, linger in the parking lot, or sometimes knock directly on his door. One demand was chilling: $12 million, or they would start cutting off his fingers. The Dodgers caught wind of the threats and ramped up their security, but that didn't stop the intimidation. By spring training in 2014, the situation had escalated so much that Major League Baseball's security division got involved. But even that couldn't stop the financial bleeding. Between 2013 and 2016, Puig's MLB income was being drained from every direction. The numbers are staggering. The original smugglers demanded $1.3 million. So-called security consultants took another $800,000. Legal settlements tallied up to $1.4 million. And those were just the payments with paper trails. People close to Puig estimated another $2.5 million vanished into the shadows. The legal headaches were just as overwhelming. In 2013, a man named Rudy Pujols claimed Puig owed him 20% of everything he'd ever make, based on a contract signed under pressure in that Mexican motel. Then Capital Sports Management came forward, demanding $8.3 million before their case fell apart due to forged documents. But the most dangerous turn came in 2015. Gilberto Corbacho Dodino filed a $12 million lawsuit that inadvertently exposed the deep, dirty connections between Cuban baseball smuggling rings and organized crime. By then, Puig wasn't just a young ball player trying to find his rhythm. He was juggling a double life, one as an MLB star, the other as a man still hunted by his past. Just imagine being 21 years old, in a foreign country, adjusting to a new language, a new culture, new expectations, and behind all of that, knowing that a cartel was watching your every move. To make matters worse, the cartel made sure Puig knew his family in Cuba could be reached at any time. In a candid 2023 interview with Univision Deportes, Puig reflected on those years. "Every time I stepped up to bat, every time I threw to the plate, I wasn't thinking about the game," he said. "I was thinking about my family, about the threats, about the money I owed. Baseball wasn't my escape. It became part of my prison. But even prison walls couldn't contain his talent." On June 3, 2013, the Dodgers called Puig up to the majors. He stepped into the batter's box for the first time as a major leaguer, not just carrying the weight of expectation, but also the invisible burden of a life in hiding. His first month? Historic. A .436 batting average, 7 home runs, a .713 slugging percentage. Numbers like that had only been matched by legends like Joe DiMaggio and Roy Campanella. The media called him the Wild Horse for his uncontainable energy, his reckless abandon on the base paths, his cannon of an arm in right field. But what fans didn't realize was that the chaos in his game mirrored the chaos in his life. Those reckless slides, those dramatic throws, that fire, it all came from a deep place of fear and urgency. Puig wasn't just playing baseball, he was surviving. As Pugmania swept through the MLB, the cartel's grip never loosened, and their reach turned terrifyingly public in Miami when Gilberto Suarez, a businessman who had helped orchestrate Puig's escape, was shot in broad daylight. He survived, but the message was loud and clear. No one was untouchable. The shooting triggered a federal investigation. For the first time, the U.S. government began to truly understand the world Puig had come from and what he was still entangled in. During this time, Puig wasn't just impressing, he was dominating. In his first 100 games, he posted a .324 batting average with 19 home runs. His throws from right field were so lethal that base runners stopped even trying to challenge him. His advanced metrics were off the charts, a 159 OPS plus and a 5.0 WAR in half a season. The talent was undeniable, but behind the highlight reels, a darker, invisible battle was still raging. Those infamous late arrivals to games? At first, the Dodgers chalked it up to immaturity, but there was more going on. Puig had been taught to vary his routes, change his routines, never be predictable. Lessons learned dodging both Cuban authorities and Mexican cartels. These were survival instincts, not attitude problems. Still, it caused friction in the clubhouse. How do you explain to Clayton Kershaw that you missed batting practice because you were meeting with FBI agents? How do you tell Adrian Gonzalez you switched hotels in the middle of the night because someone was following you? Puig didn't tell anyone. He couldn't, and that silence created distance. Then came another blow. In 2014, Puig was caught driving nearly 100 mph in a 50 mph zone in Tennessee. Fans saw it as recklessness. But knowing what we do now, it's possible he was scared, looking over his shoulder, watching for shadows. Still, it did damage his reputation, his bat flips, his outbursts, his refusal to play by baseball's unwritten rules. It all seemed like arrogance. But maybe it was the only way he knew how to fight back against a world closing in around him. Through it all, the skill never faded. He earned his first All-Star selection that year, hitting .296 with 16 home runs and 5.3 WR. He was a game changer. But by the end of 2014, the pressure started cracking through the surface. A heated dugout confrontation with Zach Greinke made headlines. What fans didn't see were the bills piling up for personal security, hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. Puig was bleeding money, trying to protect his family and himself, while still keeping up the facade of a rising MLB star. The Dodgers began to suspect something was seriously wrong, but they had no idea just how deep the issues went. All the while, Puig was meeting regularly with federal agents, He wasn't just a player anymore. He was part of a growing investigation into human trafficking, extortion, and cartel violence. By 2015, Puig should have been entering his prime, but the chaos he carried was starting to show. His once electric hitting became inconsistent. His fielding, once brilliant, turned erratic. A hamstring injury limited him to just 79 games, and his batting average dropped to .255. On the surface, it looked like a classic case of a young player struggling to adjust. But the truth was much darker. Even as some of the original cartel members were arrested, the threats didn't stop. Puig was still paying for protection, up to $300,000 a year. Every road trip required new security plans. Every day brought new fear. The strains seeped into every corner of his life. Veterans like Justin Turner and Adrian Gonzalez tried to guide him, but how do you mentor someone who's living in fear for his life? Who's answering phone calls that might carry news of a threat to his family? By 2016, Puig's reputation inside the Dodgers organization had taken a hit. His mood swings, his disappearing focus, his constant lateness, they weren't signs of a bad teammate. They were signs of a young man crumbling under impossible weight. At one particularly tense meeting, team officials confronted him about his downward spiral. What they didn't know was that just hours earlier, Puig had received new threats directed at his family back in Cuba. His performance that year reflected the mental toll. A .263 average, only 11 home runs, and inconsistent defense. The spark was dimming. Then in 2017, a brief comeback. Puig slugged 28 home runs, played elite defense, and helped the Dodgers reach the World Series. It looked like he was finally stabilizing, but behind the scenes the extortion had simply evolved. Now they were targeting his endorsement deals. Demand letters arrived asking for cuts from sponsorship earnings, appearances, and off-field income. By the time 2018 rolled around, the Dodgers were running out of patience. Puig's numbers were still respectable, 23 home runs, a .267 batting average, but the behind-the-scenes drama had become too much to bear. The constant security concerns, the mood swings, the unpredictability, it was all weighing down the team. The same fire that once made him a fan favorite was now burning bridges in the clubhouse. Quietly, the Dodgers began making calls, gauging interest from other teams. But trading Puig wasn't simple. How do you pitch a player whose off-field baggage includes cartel threats, ongoing legal battles, and secret FBI meetings? What team would willingly inherit that kind of chaos? Meanwhile, Puig's play began to reflect the tension. He'd make a jaw-dropping catch one inning, then throw to the wrong base the next. Hit a game-tying home run, then get thrown out trying to stretch a single into a double. The inconsistency was maddening. Finally, in December 2018, the Dodgers pulled the trigger. Puig was traded to the Cincinnati Reds. On paper, it looked like a fresh start. A smaller market, less media pressure, and Great American Ballpark's hitter-friendly dimensions seemed like a perfect fit. And for a while it worked. In just 100 games with the Reds, Puig belted 22 home runs and drove in 61 runs. The passion was still there. The bat flips, the big throws, the sprinting catches, they all came back. But there was something different, too. He seemed more focused, less erratic, maybe even lighter. But it didn't last. Midway through the 2019 season, Puig was traded again, this time to the Cleveland Indians, who were making a playoff push and needed power in the lineup. In Cleveland, fans saw a new side of Puig. He was more selective at the plate. His walk rate went up. He was making better contact. Between both teams, he finished the 2019 season with solid numbers, a .267 batting average, 24 home runs, 84 RBIs. But off the field, his troubles were far from over. Late in 2019, sexual assault allegations emerged. A woman accused Puig of assaulting her at a Lakers game in 2018 while he was still with the Dodgers. Puig denied the allegations, but the damage to his public image was immediate and lasting. Still, heading into the 2020 season, there was hope. As a free agent, Puig had agreed to terms with the Atlanta Braves for the COVID-shortened season. It looked like a comeback was on the horizon. Then he tested positive for COVID. The deal collapsed. And this time, it wasn't just bad timing. It was the end. While other players returned after protocols, Puig remained unsigned. Teams had begun receiving troubling reports about his off-field behavior. The sexual assault allegations hadn't gone away, and the whispers of gambling, of unresolved cartel connections made clubs nervous. With the doors to MLB closed, Puig took his talent south, signing with El Águila de Veracruz in the Mexican League. He hit .312 with 10 home runs in 62 games. The bat still had pop, but it wasn't the same Puig who had once lit up Los Angeles. The speed had faded. The arm wasn't as sharp. The brilliance came in flashes, not storms, and whatever slim hope remained of returning to MLB was completely crushed in April 2023. That's when Puig agreed to plead guilty to lying to federal investigators about his involvement in illegal sports betting. The feds had uncovered hundreds of bets placed through an unlicensed gambling ring. While none were on baseball, just being involved in illegal gambling was a career killer, especially for someone already carrying so much baggage. Worse, Puig hadn't just gambled, he'd lied to federal agents about it. At 34, Puig now exists in a strange kind of baseball purgatory. He can still hit, still run, still throw, but he's untouchable. The cartel ties, the lawsuits, the assault allegations, and now the gambling scandal have combined into a cloud no MLB team wants to walk under. And the cruel irony? The very style that once made Puig controversial, his emotion, his flair, his defiance of tradition, has since become mainstream. Today, MLB markets bat flips. Emotional outbursts are celebrated. Players are encouraged to show passion. Baseball has caught up to Puig, but too late for him. Statistically, Puig's story is one of unfinished greatness. Over 7 MLB seasons, he hit .277 with 132 home runs and 79 stolen bases. He racked up 18.3 WAR, earned an All-Star nod, and helped lead his team to 2 World Series appearances. On paper, it's a solid career. But when you factor in what he endured and what he lost, it feels more like a cautionary tale than a celebration. What could Yasiel Puig have been if his path hadn't been so haunted? Could he have been a Hall of Famer? The numbers from his early seasons suggest the potential was there. But we'll never know. What we do know is that Puig's journey changed Major League Baseball forever. His case exposed the dark underworld behind Cuban baseball defectors, the smuggling rings, the extortion, the criminal infrastructure. Since then, MLB has made real changes. Teams now vet international signees more thoroughly. They provide better resources for defectors trying to navigate new countries, languages, and cultures. Puig forced baseball to face its blind spots. He was a once-in-a-generation talent, but he was also a young man trying to escape a nightmare, only to find himself in a new one. His legacy is complicated, tragic, unfinished, but unforgettable.